Okay, everyone. Today we're going to talk about some of the Neo-Freudians. These are theorists who were followers of Freud. Adler and Jung particularly were colleagues, but they kind of went off on their own and developed their own theories. And Karen Horney, her theories basically are derived very much from Freud, but she goes in a more feminist direction, certainly, than Freud did. So right now we're going to talk about Adler. I'm going to skip a little bit down to do an edited version of today of the PowerPoint here. Talk a little bit about Adler. If you actually want to take a look at Adler speaking, I have a link here to a little YouTube video. So let's click on it and hear from Adler himself for a little bit. Maybe a little hard to understand his accent.
The socially mistaken pattern is built up in the first 4 or 5 years. Mostly we find is reasons for it in perfect organs, or that the child had been pampered, or that we find hated children is among orphans, sometimes illegitimate children, ugly children, not wanted children, and so on. This pattern is fixed and can be changed only if we are able to convince this child about the mistake or later in life. Therefore we could eliminate the mistake in this pattern either in prevention, to educate the family how to educate children rightly, or we could make the school an instrument of the social progress, to recognize the mistakes in their beginning and to accomplish more social interest among the pupils. Later in life it is more difficult and it must be an individual treatment. How to convince such a person and how to change him. In this way we are sure that the key of the individual psychology is the most important and worthwhile key, and we can get much better using other methods. What is the mistake made in the childhood and how to correct it?
All right, I think we'll pause the video for now. Just wanted to just to show you a little bit about. Wanted to point out that he mentioned social interest, and that's the topic we're going to be talking about today when we're talking about Adler. Children developing a sense of social interest. That was really important to Adler as far as developing an interest in being productive, making a contribution to the world's, to the world community, so to speak. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Just the basic differences here between Adler and Freud. One of the issue here with one thing with Adler, he's talked about being that it's much more social influences influencing us. It's not as much these unconscious conflicts, but it's our interactions with other people that is important. And kind of from his perspective, from Adler's perspective, we can kind of go in two directions. One would be what he called striving for superiority, and another would be striving for success. With striving for superiority, we are essentially trying to compensate for our own feelings of inferiority, and doing this by trying to show ourselves to be better than other people, so to speak. So that would be the striving for superiority. And also, or you can just more or less strive for success, and that would be kind of like moving towards social interest. Kind of being, making a contribution to the world, making the world a better place. Okay. Another tenet of individual psychology, again Adlerian psychology, is a sense of personal responsibility. We are responsible for who we are. When it comes to Freud, the ego kind of has to control the id, which really is what is pushing us, pushing us. And there's a limit to what we can have personal control over. But with Adlerian psychology, we're much more have a sense of personal responsibility. We're responsible for ourselves, for our own successes, and we're responsible for who we are. We choose the life that we live. In fact, we'll talk about the concept of lifestyle, the style of life. Lifestyle is actually a term that Adler developed, and we kind of understand the term lifestyle, the kind of life that you choose to live. Another important aspect of Adlerian psychology is that we are looking forward. The Adlerian psychology, human beings are goal-directed. We're looking for the future, and our behavior is shaped by our view of the future. In fact, everything we do, essentially, in some way, is directed toward that final goal, directed toward our future goal. And finally, as another deviation from Freud, is the importance of what is in your conscious mind. Your unconscious still exists, but your conscious mind is important as well. Freud really thought it was the unconscious that was a lot more important. But Adler is saying essentially that your unconscious and your conscious are both working together toward reaching your final goal, towards becoming who you are. And so these are some differences that Freud and Adler had. And again, Adler and Freud were colleagues. They were very close colleagues. But then when Adler kind of went off on his own, Freud basically wanted to have nothing to do with him afterwards. I think Freud, and Freud did the same thing with Jung. So Freud was kind of a vindictive guy, but because it was just an interesting story about their relationship. Okay, Adler and Freud really came from similar backgrounds. They're both Jewish. They both came from Austria. And one of the applications of Adlerian psychology has to do with the study of birth order, whether you're a firstborn, only child, middleborn child, whatnot. According to Adler, that plays a big role in how you develop. And there's a good amount of research on this. I'm not sure I'm a big proponent of it, but there seems to be a lot of interest in that particular topic. So, his older brother was financially successful, so there was a little bit of a sense of a sibling rivalry there. And that might have influenced him in the development of his theory, trying to match up with his older brother. And again, he was a member of his Freud's organization, Freud's group that met to discuss psychology. But he kind of, again, Freud went on his own. He founded the Society for Individual Psychologists. Let's click on this link. So I'll give you, so you get to see the website here. North American Society of Adlerian Psychology. So clearly, Adler has there's Adler and its influence today. It's applied in therapy a lot. Helping people essentially reach their goals and whatnot. So, but anyway, that is if you wanted to explore this particular website, you can do that. And he died in 1937. Actually, a couple of years ago, I went to an APA conference and I heard a talk by a practicing clinical psychologist. And she was well in her 90s, and she did a talk, and she actually had met Alfred Adler. So it's kind of interesting that I heard someone speak who actually met this guy that long ago. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of these concepts that Adler discussed. So we have the striving for superiority or success. Again, one or the other, and that's essentially the force behind our behavior. Choosing one or the other. Our subjective perceptions shape our behavior. In other words, we look at the world and our situation and other people based on our own personal point of view. So that's a subjective perception. And, we kind of build our view of the world around this subjective perception. Our personality is unified and self-consistent. Again, we're moving toward that single goal, that final goal. And this unification reflects that more or less everything that we're doing is moving us in that direction. And it's always toward that one goal. The value of all of our activities seen from the social interest perspective. The concept of social interest, making a contribution to the world, making the world a better place, that is how we essentially could evaluate everything that we do. If we're moving in that direction, then these are positive activities. Our personality structure becomes our lifestyle. We build our style of life, our lifestyle, around this image that we have of ourselves and our relationships with others. And our lifestyle is molded by our creative power. Creative power meaning that we have the creative ability to essentially follow our path and move in those directions toward our own final goal, and do it in our own unique way. Okay, so the final goal of our behavior is either going to be success for humanity or personal superiority. And both of these are compensations for feelings of inferiority. If you've heard the term of an inferiority complex, again, that's a term that comes from Adler. We have this feelings of inferiority, and this inferiority essentially is coming from our vulnerability when we are born, our weak state when we are infants, and starting from that state of weakness and dependency, we are compensating for it. Now we can compensate for it by trying to make ourselves seem better than other people, or we can compensate it by trying to make the world a better place. So we can, and again, this could be either conscious or unconscious. We can be consciously or unconsciously moving toward our goal. And according to this perspective, this final goal, again, guiding our behavior in a unified way, we could be doing these mini goals, whatever it happens to be. Maybe trying to just get an A in this class. Maybe it could be something that is one little step towards our own final goal. So let's differentiate. Striving for personal superiority. This is very self-serving goal, and again, you're compensating for that inferiority. The more psychologically healthy, striving for success is unselfish. And as I was saying before, we have this sense of inferiority, so we need to compensate for it. We need to be able to compensate for this fact that we have this weakness. Sometimes this sense of compensation could come from what he called an organ dialect, where we channel this the sense of inferiority has to do with some kind of a weak organ that we may have. But again, at birth we are weak and we are dependent, and so we are motivated to seek perfection. We're motivated to, and again, striving for superiority or for success. And it's developed, and each person's definition of success is unique. That's essentially following our own path. So we create this subjective reality for ourselves to essentially compensate for our inferiority. This is called the fictionalism. And you're working toward this final goal. And again, this is a final goal that is fictional. You've created it for yourself. And it guides your style of life. It guides your lifestyle. It gives unity to our personality, because essentially everything that we're doing is more or less moving us toward that goal. And again, our behavior is purposeful, goal-directed. So we have these physical inferiorities, and we're born physically inferior, and we use these fictions to give us a sense of strength to overcome this and this move towards perfection. Okay, so we have this power. This creative power is actually something that we can create ourselves, and it's our freedom to do this. Again, this differs a bit from Freud in that we are, taking this. We are creating this for ourselves. We are self-empowered to do this. It gives us control for our life, and again, we're responsible for our final goal. We determine how we're going to reach it, how we're going to strive toward it, and it contributes toward development of that social interest, that sense of making the world a better place. Now, this creative power, this style, if this lifestyle that we choose is one that may not be very constructive, may not be very helpful to us, he calls it the law of the low doorway. Okay, so let's picture this. Picture that you are, you want to get through a doorway, but the doorway is low. So how do you get through the doorway? You might duck through the doorway. You might go around the doorway. But in other words, the low doorway, an unproductive way of trying to go through the doorway, is to keep going forward and hitting your head on the door each and every time. Well, the law of the low doorway, if you keep following the same method of trying to reach your goal and it's getting you nowhere, that's like banging your head on a door over and over and over again. It's a very interesting visual image there. But again, you have this power to move toward that perfection, to reach your goal, and so you could use this power your own way. And again, the concept of unity of personality. Each person's personality is unique. Your behavior is directed toward a single goal. Okay, so it's not like a. So in other words, again, it gives a sense of unity to our personality. It's all moving toward this one direction. I mentioned before the organ dialect, where you can have the sense of like a deficient organ, maybe expressing the direction of the goal. So in other words, it may be if you feel this, if it's your, whatever, if it's your stomach or something like that, you may feel as if that's deficiency. Maybe you try to compensate for it somehow directed that way. And again, it's both conscious and unconscious. The unified personality is, both the conscious part and your unconscious part working together.